r/ask Reddit. What was the incident in your high school? Principal found weed in the boys' bathroom, called an assembly and told us we had to vote for who we think it was. I think the principal's son got like 98% of the votes. Suddenly the voting system wasn't valid. We didn't even coordinate it. Everyone had the same idea at once and it was glorious. I love democracy. Principal, in order to ensure our security and continuing stability, the Republic will be reorganized into the First Galactic Empire for a safe and secure society. Senior year we received our yearbooks the week of graduation and to our surprise a full-page action shot for men's soccer showcased our player jumping up and lifting one leg to trap and control the ball. Unfortunately, he forgot to wear underwear that game and the tip of his wiener was fully visible sticking out of the bottom of his shorts. Our school had over 4,000 students and we were required to bring our yearbook into security to have the dong sharpied over or we would not be able to walk at graduation. The image of school admins having to sharpie in the same penis 4,000 times is gold. We were all called to an emergency assembly and told a student had died. Her friends were distraught and even the people who didn't know her went quiet. I think I remember a group of students putting together a type of memorial card. The whole morning was morbid, until the dead girl arrived at school and didn't know what was going on. How do you mess up that bad? Did they ever give any explanation as to what happened? Nah, it was swept under the rug pretty quick. I think they acknowledged they were wrong once but then just went silent about it. During my sophomore year of high school I was on spring break with my family and we went out of state to a condo for the week. Great trip. I recommend Virginia to anyone looking for a scenic getaway. When we got back from that vacation and I went to school the next Monday everyone was staring at me like they saw a ghost. I was an introvert in a public school of about 1,200 kids so it was unnerving. I had girls and guys running up and hugging me, saying they were so glad I was okay. Many of them I didn't really talk to. I was so confused. Come to find out in the next town over there was a kid who was struck by a car and killed while we were gone on spring break. His name was identical to mine, except for one letter in his last name. So everyone who saw it naturally assumed they spelled the name wrong because that spelling was a very common mistake with my name. I wouldn't call it the incident for my school but that day was very memorable and I had to share when I saw your similar story. We had a teacher who was super nice. She was out for 3 days and we didn't question it much until she wasn't there again for the next week. Turns out her husband murdered her quite brutally. Was so quiet the next few months for that class we didn't really know how to process it. He's in prison and kids with the grandparents last I read. Quite sad. My middle school gym teacher, whose name was ironically Mr. Dong, was busted for soliciting sex from a teen. In middle school my English teacher's name was Mr. Dongerson and I was talking to an old classmate about how weird he was to me and she pointed out that everyone in that class knew he was grooming me and it only validated her point when I told her about how he would show up to birthdays with presents for me. During lunch if you picked up trash and turned it into the yard attendant you would get a dime per piece. One kid did it religiously, every lunch, and was tormented and bullied the whole time. Kids would knock the trash out of his hands, push him over when he picked it up, call him all sorts of names. They were relentless. Then in junior year, he bought a 1966 Mustang. Not an incident really, but I still have respect for that kid. That kid smart. Oh man. One time this kid I was friends with brought this hot sauce called a bomb, 1.5 million Scoville units, hotter than hell, to high school and let a bunch of kids try it during lunch. I mean at least 30 kids. Some kids really started freaking out because that shit is ridiculously hot. Like you're supposed to add 1 or 2 drops to a big batch of chili to make it spicy. Some were trying to show off and took a swig of it and ended up vomiting everywhere from the heat panic. Multiple kids had to go to the nurse and be sent home because they way overdid it. Although I think most just really had no idea what a Scoville unit was or that they made hot sauce that was that ridiculously hot. It was chaos. I tried it as well, a dime size amount, and I couldn't concentrate on anything but chugging milk, and I'm really good with spicy foods. Finally the principal came on the intercom and said whoever brought the hot sauce please, just stop. My friend got into some pretty big trouble for that one. That's the principal's sound of defeat. Any teacher, really, When I break that one out in the classroom, I'm officially admitting defeat and pleading. It was the last day for the senior class. There were only 2 significant pranks that day. The principal's office was filled with balloons and glitter, and the main hallway entrance was saran wrapped. About an hour before the day ended, the principal came over the loudspeaker and said that anyone caught participating in a prank would not walk at the graduation ceremony. About a minute after he said this, the fire alarm went off. A guy who was near the principal said that he got angry and said out loud, "Someone's not walking," before storming off. An entire wing of the school was hazy and smoke was pouring out of a classroom. Turns out the science teacher was doing a laser experiment for his class and created too much smoke with a smoke machine. I went to a private school where you weren't allowed to have your phone on you. One day the vice principal bursts into a classroom and says in a panic, "Quick, I need to use someone's phone." 10 kids got detention and their phones confiscated. Screw you, Mr. Kiefer. What an a-hole. This was back in the 70s. In 7th grade, some girl just started groping the boys. If you got close to her, she would immediately grab your groin or butt, whichever was closer. Sometimes she would grab both at the same time. Of course, the boys started groping her back and it turned into a common thing to do and she let it happen. The boys then started groping other girls. Some went along with it and thought it was funny. Others got upset and told teachers and the principal. The principal called a big assembly and read the riot act. The girl that started it all acted shocked and outraged, but the adult knew she was the one that started the whole thing. Sometimes that kind of behavior is caused by being a victim of sexual abuse. Yes, I've thought about that in the years since after I learned about other cases like this. Her little brother was a strange as well. The girl in question didn't go to high school with us. I asked some of her friends about her and they said she ended up getting pregnant the summer after 8th grade and was going to some other school that was for girls only, I think. Maybe a special school for teenage girls that had gotten pregnant. It's pretty fuzzy all these years later. The father was a boy who was 2 years older than us and as an adult was in and out of prison. Last I heard about her was that she was working as a desk clerk in a motel or hotel near where we grew up, Northern California, but that would have been in the 90s. She may have worked as a stripper in San Francisco in the 80s, but the sources I got that from were less reliable. Other things I'm starting to remember. If she could, your clothes were loose enough, she would jam her hands down your pants so her hand would be making direct contact with your penis. This wasn't as common though. Mostly it was through the clothes. When a boy jammed his hands down her pants, she would just stand there with a weird grin on her face and a faraway look in her eyes. She also stopped groping the boys much once the boys started groping her. Like that was the end result she wanted all along. Thinking back, I wonder how the adults who ran the school were clueless up until the point that other girls started complaining about getting groped. She also was the one that used to bring Playboys, Penthouses and Playgirls to school when those magazines were everywhere. She kept them in her locker and during lunch she would get them out and other kids would look at them. I don't think anyone ever got caught for that. The teachers must have noticed other kids gathering around her locker, but I don't think they ever investigated. I didn't transfer in until after it happened, but I had a classmate who was in the room when it happened. Our 9th grade year, 1989 to 1990, one of the guys in the theater drama class had been threatening suicide and to hurt friends and classmates. She and all her friends went to the teachers and principal, but were told they could do nothing because he had no history and therefore, he had to do something first. He did. Walked in mid-class, took the entire room, including my friend and her friends who had reported his threats, hostage, brandished the gun around repeatedly, then shot one of their mutual friends who was trying to talk him down. Kid lost his ear, but not his life. Thankfully, she was still giving legal depositions 2 years later when I met her, which is how I heard the story. This would definitely be negligence on the school's part, which is why she was giving depos. There is a general duty to protect your students, especially in the face of actual threats. It also sounds like you have multiple kids reporting multiple incidents, so the idea that you could say the kids had no history is laughable. He might not have had a file, but a simple investigation would likely have revealed even more incidents. Someone I knew tried to call in a bomb threat from a payphone during finals week. This was in the 90s and nobody took him seriously, and the school found out who he was and suspended him for like a couple days. I'd imagine now the school would go on lockdown, or just close and not let any students in. Since he did it early in the morning, the kid would probably end up getting arrested by a SWAT team with a bomb squad nearby, cost the city a fortune, get jailed, or at least expelled, and their life would be ruined. Yep, we had a rash of fire alarms my junior year. The principal pleaded for them to stop. One weekend the school raided all the alarms with that ink that sprays whoever pulls it. Dude got nailed, charged with a serious crime because he foolishly admitted to pulling like 10 alarms. He spent his Christmas at juvenile hall. A teacher in my high school walked into the unisex bathroom because someone reported that 2 kids went into it together. He walked in, found nobody in there, and as he walked out the 2 kids fell from the ceiling completely naked and onto the floor in front of him. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content, bruh. It's free and that's a great price.